Welcome everyone, and thank you, Rain, for that beautiful introduction. It's so good to have you all here today. Thank you to Erwin and Jake for both having your cameras on so far. Really appreciate that. Because, you know, what's so important when we want to positively influence decision makers is we first want to connect before we start giving content. And really important, that power of connection. And I know Alan's trying to connect with his camera right now. It's not quite working. We do get technical issues sometimes, but what I would love is every single one of you that is on today, if you can pop into the chat your name, where you are from, and what you do in this world. And then we can kind of connect with each other. I think that'd be really powerful. And for those high achievers in the room, you can pop also in there why you decided to come along to this session today. Now, when it comes to positively influencing decision makers, we need to really understand what's important in regards to things such as time, things such as what are their priorities. And we will dive into that as soon as we go through. But we first need to really understand what our job is when it comes to influencing someone. And there are two real key components when it comes to being able to positively influence a decision maker. So our first aim here, just a big thumbs up, you can see these slides. Excellent. Okay, cool. And good to see you there, Chloe, and also Thu as well. Great to see you both on the call. Now, when it comes to our aim, our first aim is to build trust. Now, we need to trust someone before we will actually allow them to influence us or even be able to let us in the door, so to speak. So first, you need to build trust to unlock the door. And then secondly, you need to reduce uncertainty. Now, when we look at influencing decision makers, and a lot of them are C-suite, not always, it depends who they are, and you really need to understand who it is that you're speaking to. We need to understand there are a few aspects. So normally when we take you through a journey of this, we look at things such as clarity, content, communication, connection, and also challenges that you might face in the ability to influence a key decision maker. Harshal, welcome as well. Great to see you here. And thank you for joining us there from Adelaide. But we're going to focus on just two aspects today of this. And the first one is connection. And so we're going to dive in here in a little bit into connection before we really start to go into what sort of content, how we can use that. Now, in regards to, when we think about being connected, we need to think about, we want people, like, say for me, like I'm a CEO, when I want people to come in to influence me, because I love it when people want to come and talk and share an idea, or even want to sell me something, I really want to like you. So it's so important to be nice first. And because we want to like you and we want to know that you actually care about us. So if you care about what I do and what I do matters, I'm going to lean in a little bit more and really like you. But also importantly, and a lot of people kind of miss this part, is you also need to be interesting, if not fascinating. So if you're just likable, yeah, that's okay. But I also want to know that you care about me. And also I want you to find you interesting and fascinating. So three really important things to remember from a connection. Now, the big thing when it comes to connecting with someone, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether it's on Zoom, is that you need to realize straight away that it's not about you. And you've got to shift from that mindset of thinking about, okay, do I look good? Making sure I don't look bad, to focusing on making a difference and providing value to that person. So it's not about looking bad or looking good. It's got to be around, how can I help you and make a difference? So my lens coming into this is to go, okay, who's in the audience and how can I help them? What sort of challenges might they be going through in regards to how they might be influencing leaders around them or influencing people to become a supplier or to buy their services? So how can I help you? And that's the big intention shift, rather than what am I going to say? How do I look? Really, really important. Now, we first want to seek to understand before being understood. So to do that, we need to look at curious listening, and how can we be someone who can build curious conversations. And that first part is around deep questioning, and the second part is around active listening. And so if we can first kind of look from that perspective of how can we first seek to understand before being understood, and then people are going to lean in. They're going to want to know more. The more you are interested in someone else, the more interesting you will become to them. So I'd like to know in the chat, and I want you to interact today. It's not all about me, and I want to make sure that you get an opportunity here to be able to interact. So I would like to know, for you, what is a charismatic conversation? When you're in a conversation and you go, oh, that person is quite charismatic, what do you notice? Pop it in the chat. What are some things that you notice when you feel like you're in a really likable, enjoyable, charismatic style conversation? What do you notice the other person does? Or what do you notice you do? Smile. Yep, they're good listeners. What else? Thank you, Chloe and Alan. Engaging. I'd love to see other people's ideas. Very attentive and welcoming. Very good. I'll just get you to pop it in the chat because we've got a fairly short session today there, Erwin. Asking questions, which is great. Beautiful. Yeah, so things like creating a welcoming environment, really focused answers, where they feel happy and appreciated. Love it. So we want to make sure we ask really interesting questions, and don't just ask one question, go deeper. Like once you've asked a question, how can you go deeper and deeper so that you understand the person even more, or you understand what they know about the topic you want to speak on, or you gain more insights into what their problems are. So really important that we can ask those deeper questions and interesting questions, because we want to kind of find what is, say the origin of their problems, so that when you share what you've got for them, what you can offer and how you can influence them, you can connect on an even deeper level personally, because people are going to make decisions based on that personal connection. And if you're in a group setting, or even if you're just in, one-to-one, I want you to think about how you can take the lead in bringing all participants into the conversation. So if you've got, say for today, we've got, about 10 of us in the room here right now. I'm not sure who Zoom user is, but you would have seen so far, I've pretty much used everyone's name so far. And, I'm making sure that I'm seeing answers from you, and I'll include you in it. Okay, because of this style of presentation, I won't get you to unmute at this point, but I'm making sure that you come into the conversation. Now, the second part was active listening. So I'd love you to pop into the chat right now. What for you is active listening? What is active listening mean to you? How do you know if someone is actively listening to you or you are actively listening to them? Eye contact, fantastic. Very good. Nodding acknowledgement, eye contact, fantastic. What else? So Erwin, I'll just get you to pop it in the chat. Cool. Asking questions. Oh, you haven't got, okay, cool. All right, you're on mute there at the moment as well, so you can't type. All right, so Erwin, I'll let you unmute here because I'd like to include you in the conversation. Quick one.
Asking questions.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've got repeating what they say, Chloe, summarizing what you know and understand, Jake, Harsha was asking questions. Excellent. So a couple of other things that you can think about is removing distractions. So for instance, I have turned off my phone for this session. So when I come into a conversation with someone or a meeting, unless I need it for something in that meeting, I will turn it off. Also around how can you give them positive encouragement? or even thinking about avoiding interrupting with solutions. Because sometimes, yes, we have a solution to the problem, but if we answer too quickly, we don't actually get to the root of the problem, and we can't actually then really help them. We may just sit on the surface, but there may be something bigger below the surface. You know, we all see the iceberg type rule where the bigger things are generally hidden below the surface. So we need to go deeper, and we need to listen and wait before actually giving a solution. Because a lot of the time, either we may only touch the surface, or we may even be going down the wrong track because we haven't heard enough from them yet. Now, and thank you for all of you for interacting there as well. Now, what's super important when it comes to connection as well is, if you think about in this world, if we can't visually see something in our mind or actually in front of us, most of the time we won't take action. Most of the time we go, okay, that's interesting, or that's nice, but we won't actually buy into it properly because we need to be able to visualize, especially the future. And if you are trying to influence someone, you're trying to influence someone for the future. It's going to be some sort of change. Is it influencing them to give you a new job or a promotion, or to influence them to buy your service, or to back you in a meeting? So it's really important that we create a visual. So one way we can do that is we can use what we call a visualization type story. And so in this, there are 3 really easy parts, and every single one of you can do this. So the first one here is to describe the current. So what's happening in this moment? Mention the change. Okay, so what's your solution? How, you know, with your influence, what can they change to? And then paint a picture using people. Okay, so if we look at some ideas here, and feel free to take screenshots throughout this, we will send the recording afterwards to you. And I think we can also send through the slides. I'm happy to do that. But sentences that might start off that describing the current is, we all know that, or right now we have, or in the current environment. Mention the change. I am proposing, or we will, or this is what we can do. This is how we can do this. So what are the changes going to be? But then we paint a picture using people. Now, there's some great sentence starters here where we can start to make a picture. So I'm going to give you 2, and then I'm going to see if you can think of some other ways that you could start a sentence where you paint a picture of the future. So the first one is imagine if. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing here. So imagine if we could take a simple customer transaction that is really complex at the moment and change that into something that is automated and happens instantaneously. Or what if we could solve the problem of the Ukraine war by doing this? Okay, so it's imagining something. So what are some other words that you think could use that would start to turn on our visual cues inside our brain? Pop it in the chat. So we've got imagine if, so you imagine something, or what if we could? What are some other things? Can you see a future? Ah, very good. I like that one. What else could we use? Remember the last time. Okay, good. Thank you, Harsha. That's a good one. All right, some other words you could use. How can we envision this together? Great, Chloe. I like that. So some other ones that I really like are, what would a world look like if? Or what if? Let us imagine. Picture this. Fantasize. Dream. Conceptualize. Visualize. View. These are all really, really good. For example. Yep, so that's good. So you're now going example. So we're now starting to think, okay, what might this be? So really, really good. All right, so I'm just going to pop a couple of those into the chat there so you've got them. So there are some great ways where you can start to turn on the visual part of the brain. Okay, but really important, if you can use a person in this. So say, for instance, we had, say we went to a checkout, and at the checkout, there were 5 processes that you needed to get through to buy something. Okay, so imagine, and the change is going to be that we're going to change that to an automated purchasing process that happened instantaneously. So if I got to the third part of painting a picture, imagine if Johnny walked up to the counter, and as he placed down his product on the counter, Jenny would scan it. And as she scanned it, Johnny was, normally he would be thinking about that it was going to take a long time. He'd have to bring out his wallet, and he'd have to pull out the money and pay with his money, and then the cashier would type it in, and Johnny would be, a little bit frustrated. But this time, as soon as she scanned it, there was an automatic recognizing camera that recognized the person's eye, and instantaneously it was able to make a payment based on that person's DNA. So through eye recognition, they were able to purchase his iPod, his ears, in one go, just by scanning the product. Okay, so imagine if, could that happen? Maybe, probably not available yet. I'm sure it could be. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. You need to use a person in there, and imagine how, Johnny felt amazing as he walked out because the process was so fast. So that is connection. We want to build that connection. So we need to think about how we can build a relationship, how we can listen, and then how can we paint a picture of the future. But the second component, which is really important when it comes to influencing someone, and we talked about connection before content. So we need to have real clarity around what we are going to say. So we need to think about how we remove the unnecessary. And this is super important when it comes to influencing a decision maker. A lot of the time, they don't have much time, and they want to feel real certainty from you. They want to feel conviction, and they want real clarity from you. So we're going to look at clarity in just this next component of this session, because it's really, really important. Now, the first part of when it comes to clarity is to really understand who am I speaking to, and what is that profile of the person you're trying to influence. What type of person are they? Do they think big picture? Do they think detail? Are they someone who is very time constrained? Are they someone who wants to get to know you more, or just get to the point? So we need to understand the audience first. But then it's really important to then understand, before you start thinking about what you're going to say, is around what are your outcomes. So you need some real clear objectives to what you're going to say. And the first part of this is the kind of your personal objective, and then what action you need. So the personal is, what do I want to achieve? So by having a conversation or presenting something, and I want to influence, what do you want them to, how do you want them to influence by the end? What is the outcome you are looking for? And then the second part is the action needed. What do you want them to think, feel, or do? So this is really important to understand first, before you think about what you want to say to the person you want to influence. Once you've done that, we then need to really want to make sure that we have one core message that we can repeat to, because we want to anchor something in the mind. So we want to think about, what is that one thing they can easily remember between 1 and 4 words. Generally 3 words is really good because it's got a rhythm to it and it's easy for our mind to understand. But any more than 4, and it gets a little bit hard to remember. Okay, so one of the ones you would have heard from me so far today is connection before content. And I would have said it 5 times already so far, maybe. Okay, so that's 3 words, connection before content. I want you to walk away thinking that when you want to influence someone. So what is a one core repeatable message? It's that something that you say often that anchors in your message that you want them to remember when you go to influence someone. Because remember, they may not be the final decision maker that you're influencing. So you need something that will anchor in their mind. All right, so it's kind of like a book title. It's like a headline, something catchy. It's a key thread that you use all the way through. What is that one core repeatable idea? Now, to get to this, how do we do this? And I really love this. And this is a great approach that you can use for to really being able to determine what is most important here. And so when we look at our ideas for what do we want to say in something, we can look at our content in this way. I want you to think of 3 buckets. All right, the first one is must know, second one is should know, and the third one is things that are interesting to you. Which one, and I know a couple of you may have seen this before, so if you've seen it before, don't answer. But for those who haven't seen this yet, which one is your enemy? Which one will get you into trouble when you're trying to influence someone? Must know, should know, or interesting? Is it the green, the blue, or the yellow bucket? Pop it in the chat. Or for Erwin, you might want to unmute. You can, because you can't type right now. You can unmute if you wish. Which one is your enemy when it comes to influencing someone? Must know, should know, or interesting?
Should know.
Okay, good try. Anyone else want to pop it in the chat there? All right, here we go. It is interesting. All right, because what happens when we start talking about interesting is that we tend to go on and on and on because we're so passionate about it. We'll keep talking. So we've got to really try and stick into that must know. And that's your job. You need to remove the unnecessary and decide what's necessary for them. A really key kind of thing to do, really, really good experiment. And I use this all the time for every meeting that I go into, any presentation I do. I always think about what's must know, should know, and interesting, and then remove the interesting because it's going to get me in trouble. Okay. So we need to organize then and how we use this one called repeatable idea is that it's the anchor. Then we might talk about something, but then we need to go back to the one called repeatable idea again. Then the second thing you want to speak about, then link it back to your one core repeatable idea. Third one, back to the one core repeatable idea. So everything that you say, like these details here are kind of like your 5 key points, but they all must link back to that one key thread that you keep mentioning, which is, and today, connection before content. All right, finally, I want to just go into a bit of psychology of C-suite here. And here are some things that are really important for you to understand when it comes to the psychology of C-suite. And some of these you'll already know, but some of these may trigger you to kind of think a bit more. And we're not always going to know all this information, but are things that can help us. All right, so the first one is importance. You know, what is a must-do priority right now for them, and how can we link to it versus a like to do or someone else can do? So how can you link what you're trying to influence with to a must-do priority? Is it relevant right now in their world? And what effect might it have on the bigger picture on what they're working on? So what is the importance? Make sure, most importantly, it's a must-do priority for them, or it's the most important thing for them right now. You've got to try and position it around that. Second component around the psychology of C-suite is vision. You know, how can you connect what you're trying to influence them with in regards to helping them achieve a long-term vision of a company or the long-term vision of them as a person? How can you connect it? Because once you connect to that, then it becomes very, very important for them. Thirdly, we need to look at how are they measured from a performance perspective. So for instance, a CEO would be measured by a board of directors or the owner, like a chief marketing officer or a chief technology officer or a CFO. They are going to be measured predominantly by the CEO. So who are they being measured by as a decision maker? And so we need to consider those. Now, I'm just going to focus on C-suite here. And here are 5 elements that we find many C-suite are measured on, and you can write these down. The first one is strategy. You know, how does it link to the strategy, what they're doing of the strategy of the organization? How can it support the growth and development of their people? How can things, you know, how can you connect it to something that will help them be compliant or make sure with regards to the way they run business? how effectively can it help them implement the strategic plan? And fifth, how can it improve profitability? Okay, revenue, yes, that's great, but profitability is the most important component here when it comes to mini C-suite. All right, so you got that. You can take screenshots if you wish. We will have a final screen that shows all of these. Then we need to look at decisions and try and get a picture of how do they make decisions. Is this a person that prefers, oh, sorry. Yeah, cool, we can still see that. All right, so firstly, do they like to know how it will help the vision and to help them achieve the vision? Are they someone who's relentlessly focused on detail like myself? They might be someone who only trusts credible sources. Are they someone who likes more risk? Are they risk averse, or are they someone who likes more risk? Or are they someone who's really controlling and likes to make their ideas their own? So how can you swing it in a way that they think it's their idea? How can you influence them that way? And then the final component here is trust. And as we mentioned before, we want to do business with people that are human, and we want to do business with people we like, that understand them and find them interesting, if not fascinating. All right, so that's just a quick insight into some areas of the psychology of C-suite that can help you when it comes to influencing. All right, it's been a big session so far. We have dived into really understanding the importance of connection before content as we go out there to positively influence the decision makers. So thank you all of you for joining so far.